Welcome to another edition of What Barrie's Talking About from Barrie 360. I'm Dan Blakely. On this week's program, we get the mayor talking about a couple of controversial issues in the city, supervised consumption sites, and the Sportsfield that was proposed for the Waterfront. And we hear from the Simcoe County Rovers Football Club about this week's championship game against Vaughan. We get the conversation started after this. Mayor Alex Nuttall paid his regular monthly visit to Barrie 360 this week. Our Ian MacLennan speaking with him at length about two of the major issues the city has been dealing with: supervised consumption sites, which the province has or is in the process of closing, and the prospect of a sports field on the waterfront. We get his thoughts first on the sports field, which was met with much opposition and led to a review by a third party.
A very in-depth report, more than I expected. I thought the focus would be on the sports field primarily, but he's expanded upon that. He recommended that the sports field, where it was supposed to go, one side of the South Shore, not happen. But just your overview of the report that was presented.
I think Marshall did a lot of good work there. Obviously, I was feeding into the report like I think everybody else was in terms of some of the changes that were happening with regards to requests from organizations in the community. And I think what Marshall did was he said, okay, yes, this should be a park over here, but it shouldn't be a formal sports park. And because of the differing requests coming in, let's see if we can, make some of this sports field stuff happen over towards, Barrie Central and Queen's Park, and leave it a little bit more passive over at Allendale Station Park. And at the same time, in order for those things to happen, there had to be a relook at the theater space that had been dedicated to the old Fisher Auditorium, or Barrie Central site, as many people would refer to it. And, we actually met down at the current Sea Cadet site and I'd said to him, what about this, right? That would free up those. And that
location, Bayshore, Simcoe Street area, the dock by the transient docks in that area?
Yeah. So really what I would refer to it as kind of the Spirit Catcher parking lot in the Cadet and the current Cadet site, the foot of Bayfield Street. So it was, a really interesting journey over the 2 months. We obviously had a lot of feeding into the report that Marshall completed. And, I think a lot of it was really good information, but I think it's also really important to recognize that, Marshall did recommend a 2-acre portion of Allendale Station Park be used for, yes, passive, but the opportunity for parents and grandparents and kids to be enjoying this space all at the same time. And it to be a place where you could go and throw a Frisbee or maybe just sit down and have a picnic or something like that. So there's a lot in the report. He put a ton of effort in. I couldn't be more thankful on behalf of the city for the work that Marshall's done, and we look forward to seeing where it's going.
Now, there was opposition to the proposed the sports field that was approved by City Council. Looking back, do you wish that something had been done differently or there had been more consultation?
No, I think, as you know, it was a year process. There were public meetings on this in May of 23, June of 23, August of 23, September, October of 23. It's as I've said on this before, I think that there's a missing piece in the community now for some folks, which is the print media piece. Lots of folks, would get their news when they picked up the newspaper. Even if they didn't open it, they saw a headline, right? And that's ended. That's changed. So we need to find better ways to get through to people, change how we're communicating in order to be able to get the information out earlier. But as I look back, I actually think that entire debate we had as a community, it has spurred an opportunity for the city of Barrie that wasn't there. Like, it wasn't there 3 months ago. Right? When we have global sports and entertainment organizations trying to choose Barrie for a new launch because of the conversation we've been having, that's a good thing as a community. It's good to have these debates. It's good to get this information, and it's good to attract investment from outside into the community, into our young people, into the opportunities that exist in the city of Barrie, whether it's in sports or arts or anything else.
Yeah, and his focus really on the downtown as a whole, revitalization. That Performing Arts Center, that's been bandied about for eons. I was going back to interview years ago when former Bruce Owen was talking about it, et cetera, et cetera. He's looking at a waterfront location.
Well, I think what the important thing here is that, for 20 years, we've talked, right? Like, let's be honest. Look at Allendale Station, right? Look at Allendale Station Park. Look at the cadets downtown. Look at the Performing Arts Center, right? Look at the rec center and the new fields that were supposed to be built. There's been a lot of talking. There hasn't been any action on these items. I think what we're seeing come together now, because council is, very dedicated to getting things done, and aligning that with the recommendations that have been provided by Marshall, as well as the big vision items for our downtown that council is bringing forward. I think that there's an alignment today to say, let's move forward. And one of the things this Performing Arts Center move does is I think it makes it more of a manageable build. You're going from a much larger facility to, a smaller one. The estimates are coming in not quite half of what they would have, but a little higher than half of what they would have. And you're putting it in a marquee place. I mean, what better thing would you want to see at the waterfront than you've got, these basketball courts and volleyball, and you've got all the, in the winter, the ice rink, and then adding a performing arts center to that where all of the arts and the conference space of the city can sit right in the water. Like, this is a beautiful thing, and we actually, I believe, can manage the funding of it now.
Yeah, in his report, he referenced the cash crisis that the city's in, and that if you want a performing arts center, you're going to have to go smaller. But do you really want? But not to the extent we see right now at the 5 Points, the Pratt facility. No. I think the facility down at 5 Points was something that allowed us to get to, I think, 200 seats on a good night. It was a starting point. It's time now that we move forward with a larger vision. I don't think the larger vision is 1,000 or 1,200 seats today. Doesn't mean that, down the road that we couldn't see something moving forward. But in terms of today, I think that what we're discussing and what we're hearing is that 600 to 650 seats would meet the need for today, and maybe it would make some people have to have 2 concerts instead of 1. And obviously, there's logistics and there's added cost to that. But for the vast majority of organizations, I think that we can make it fit and make it all work, and it's going to be a good step forward. I will say this though. When we look around the city, going back to those things that just haven't gotten done and they are going to get done now, there's other demands, right? So we need to move with the Performing Arts Center. We also have the demands with regards to Sadlon Arena. We have to do something in terms of bringing it back to life. It's a over 25-year-old facility now, and the shelf life was 25 to 30 years. So, that's imminent at some point. The other thing is with the requests that we're receiving in terms of this unnamed organization at this point, because we're talking about the Simcoe County Rovers, correct?
Yes, with the Rovers
soccer team. Yeah.
Yes, you'll see that over the next month or two, there's a pretty exciting opportunity that's coming, and we need to be able to meet that need as well. So there's a lot of demands.
And that's a stadium, like 2,500, I think, Marshall Green. And was that the old Barrie Central Collegiate location? That's
where Marshall's recommending it, yeah. And look, it is a stadium. When you think about the Molson Center, Sadlon Arena now, when the Molson Center was originally built, I think it was 3,800 seats. Sadlon Arena got expanded. It's now, call it 4,200. Yeah. So you're talking, let's say, half to just above half of Sadlon. The difference being there's no roof on it. And it's an outdoor facility, not an indoor facility. So, there's a lot of pressure. But if we do this right, and we figure out the finances without impacting obviously the taxpayer, the benefits to the city of Barrie of having these facilities, even for New Year's Eve, right? The benefits for having these facilities to the next generations are going to be incredible.
I know he touched on with the Rovers, they would only be utilizing it for a period of time, so it opens that up to youth facilities and youth sports and what have you. He also talked about the Barrie Baycats at Queen's Park and the central downtown. Have the Baycats been approached? Were they made aware of this?
I mean, I don't want to go too far into it,
Yeah.
but they were approached by Marshall, but they've also been approached. I've had conversations with representatives of the Baycats. We understand what their need is and their request is, and we're working through it. And Councillor Nixon is also putting a lot of time and effort into that, and very thankful for that. Queen's Park is somewhere that last year we cut back all of the shrubbery and, tried to create better sight lines to make it a safer environment in the park. And I think that actually worked to some degree. The idea that we can fit a stadium in there for the Baycats is one that I would love, but we're not going to shut down the Barrie Tennis Club to do that, right? There's already others that are using that park. There's a skate park, there's the tennis club, there's the armory. And so we need, if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then we have to look perhaps at other places.
We'll move on very quickly. But he said cash crisis. Marshall Green referenced a cash crisis. So there's lots on the table there outside of the other things that the city is responsible for with road infrastructure. Everybody knows there's road work being done, which is a good thing. How do you balance all of that then? Because, I mean, I know you're pulled in every direction, but what's a priority?
That's a fair question, right? To me, I think that there was a very clear message that we ran on in the last election, and that was that we were going to limit the increase of City Hall and everything that represents, and we're going to increase investment inside of the community in roads and in infrastructure, and these are just more pieces of infrastructure. When you look at what we've been able to accomplish so far, Bryan Drive obviously is right there, ready to be turned online. The next phase of Bryan Drive is going to happen over the next couple of years. And then we just need to look at what are our priorities and how do we achieve them. We have put away, I think, around $10 million as of the end of this year for the Performing Arts Center. We would expect to get fundraising efforts going for that. Let's say 10 or 15% of the facility should be fundraised. The same should be said of a stadium as well. There should be fundraising efforts, naming rights, all of those things. And then it comes down to getting provincial and federal support. We know that there's, funds and grants available for all of these types of investments. The Performing Arts Centre, we have the Canadian government and the Ontario government have invested in these types of facilities in the past, and the city's at the table, and I'm pretty sure we can get to a third of the cost being covered by the city pretty quickly. You add in the fundraised dollars, and all of a sudden, all we need from the federal and provincial governments is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% combined or 60% combined, which I think that they will look at as a good investment. On the stadium, last week, when we were at AMO, which is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the provincial government announced a special fund for recreation infrastructure and specifically unique opportunities. And I believe that this would hit all of the pieces for that. And we're going to go back to the province and ask them for funding. If you can imagine that it's going to cost $20 million or something like that for an outdoor stadium, I don't know what the cost is yet, and the province is going to kick in half because we can get up to $10 million through that fund that they released. That's a really good investment for the city of Barrie, and we've got to get all of our ducks in a row, and we've got to go and get all this broad support from our local MPPs, etc. But if we're going to be able to handle it in terms of the costs, it's going to require all levels of government coming together and working together and funding it together.
We'll get to the mayor's thoughts on supervised consumption sites in a moment, but first, how about the Simcoe County Rovers men's team playing in another championship game Friday night, this time against Vaughan? Rovers sporting director Daniil Henry dropped by to talk about the team, its successes, and its importance to the community with Barrie 360's Will Conkin.
Talk about the rivalry between these two, because they played each other a few times and in some playoff matches.
Yeah, so we talk about the Vaughan Simcoe County Rovers rivalry started probably in the last 3 years. We played each other 7 times, and it's now proven a thriller each match. I think we've won 4, lost 1, and tied 2. Don't quote me on that, but ultimately 2 of the top teams in the League One, and it's not a surprise that we're facing each other again.
There's been a lot of back and forth.
Yes. As late as earlier last month where we went to a 4-4 thriller. 8 goals in one game is just leading up to this moment on Friday again, where in a season where we started off pretty slowly, where my reign came in and we kind of changed this project and turned things around. Credit to the coaching staff that came in from the women's side. But ultimately we were playing for a cup, and it could make a season that started off slow a memorable one.
In terms of strategy, will there be more moving of kind of chess pieces because these teams are familiar?
Yes, but I always said if it's not broken, you don't have to change too much. This is a mentality-driven thing, and I've been able to find each player's why. And if I put that within the house and in the group, the mentality, this group is ready to go. At the end of the game, it's something that we've done all our lives. We love the sport, so I want the guys to enjoy this moment. They've worked really hard, and I think it's a credit to the staff, Barrie Soccer, Simcoe County Rovers, ownership, and ultimately the players and everybody surrounding this project, that we're going into a finals. Let's enjoy it. Let's embrace it, and whatever comes out of it, I think we still got to pat ourselves on the back, because it's been a hell of a season.
Yeah, speaking of that, what does it mean to represent Barrie, the community, Simcoe County, and everything? And how has soccer maybe grown here with the Rovers having success?
Yeah, it's been an honor. Our visions aligned. With Barrie being a on-time market with so many young grassroots projects, and then you bring in an ownership group who've played the game, have had that experience. It's a market where we wanted to make sure that we are giving back to the community. First off, show them that in their backyard there's a local team that you can cheer for, and also give players the inspiration to go out there and one day be the Sean-Claude Lawson or the Javier George or the Jivo Lane, our goal scorer, and let them know that these guys are humans too, and one day they can be just like them.
What's more to be done with the partnership between the Rovers and the Barrie Soccer Club?
Yeah, we just want to continue to grow the game in Canada. More fields, more opportunity for absolute players to be playing, and ultimately you have to understand this is a sport that unifies people. And of course, in this time and age, it's rapidly growing, but there's a lot of life skills that you can take out of the game. Discipline, punctuality, working as a team, all of these things come together, and you don't have to be a professional soccer player at the end of the day, but you just want to take those core key values that can take you through life.
Did a mentor or someone impact you during your development 3 years in playing football, soccer, that made you want to then give back?
Yes, absolutely. I would say Julian de Guzman. First of all, I knew I could be a professional through my first interaction with a professional. I found out that they were human, and they have blood, bones, sweat, tears, emotions, just like I did. And it's a different feeling from watching them on TV, where you idolize them, and then you are able to meet these people and you understand, wow, they're human. And that's where I dare to dream. So the fact that we can now have this in our backyards, be around the community, show them some high-level football, this is a dream come true in itself. And when I know that our influence and our impact is so farly touched within this organization, the opportunities are limitless and where we can bring this game.
I'm curious as well, how has the game evolved over your time playing, and then now how are you looking at that as a sporting director, just seeing the game evolve over the years? This
is a young man's sport, or young woman's sport. It's fast. From when I started, I used my athletic attributes through everything, but when you talk about the tactical identity, the technical identity that's needed to play the game, and how fast the game is changing, the game is electric, and it's demanding a lot more on the young people's body. I feel like where we now have what took me maybe 12 years of my development or in my professional career to do, we can start bringing these aspects to the game earlier for these children now. And I think that if we start affecting the grassroots earlier, it'll have a lasting impact where it'll be so small, the finer details of what I wished I learned younger. And I think that will help them or give them the right tools as they go forward.
Does that drive you and keep you going forward of what this impact could be for the Rovers?
Yes, absolutely, because I now go away from me personally trying to affect myself and what I've done, to now knowing that I have the opportunity to impact a whole group of young men. And what I'm still lucky is that it hasn't been too long since I stopped playing, where my voice, what I do, my impact is still pretty relevant.
Yeah, it's still fresh.
It's very fresh. And sometimes I have to remind myself that I'm not playing, because when I see myself doing these calls or these meetings or on the technical staff and part of the coaching staff, I'm not going on the field. So I have to do my best to prepare themselves of the atmosphere, the surrounding, what it looks like and what that game is going to feel like, to get them ready to go on that field and ultimately go to war. And it's a service. Like, I remember playing as a national team player, and it felt like war, and I knew it was always an honor to go out there and play for my country. So I want to kind of give those same feelings to the boys and let them know it's a responsibility, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do on Friday.
Friday's championship game will be played in Vaughan at the Zanchin Automotive Soccer Center at 7601 Martin Grove Road. Kickoff is at 8:30 p.m. What Barrie's Talking About is a weekly podcast featuring the best Barrie and Simcoe County have to offer and more. You can get caught up and make it easy to keep up in the future by subscribing to What Barrie's Talking About through any podcast distributor. Still to come on What Barrie's Talking About, supervised consumption sites. Mayor Alex Nuttall weighs in. Now this.
It's cool to care.
It's a well-known fact blood transfusion saves lives. It's also a well-known fact that the world relies on voluntary unpaid donations to fill the need for blood. The need for blood never ends. Canadian Blood Services in Barrie is calling on you to help save a life. Please consider donating today. Appointments are mandatory and must be booked in advance. Book today at blood.ca through the Give Blood app or by calling 1-888-2-DONATE.
Cool to Care is brought to you by the Peggy Hill team. Keeping it real all the way to sold. Reach out now at peggyhill.com.
It's cool to care with 107.5 Cool FM.
This is What Barrie's Talking About from Barrie 360. I'm Dan Blakely. Supervised consumption sites in Ontario have drawn as much criticism as they have praise, maybe more. So much so, the province has moved to shut many of them down and will move in a different direction to help those with addictions. Mayor Alex Nuttall has been vocal on this issue. We get his thoughts on how this is going to play out. Here again is Barrie 360's Ian MacLennan.
Mayor Nuttall, you were at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario with other mayors and from across the province. The province has announced that they're pulling the plug on most supervised consumption sites and taking a focus on treatment hubs, 19 of them, I believe. You've been open about, I would say, opposed to a safe consumption site that Barrie was looking at. Previous City Council looked at the area of Innisfil Street, 80 Bradford. Health Canada approved, never heard back from the province. The Canadian Mental Health Association pulled the plug on their application, might not have come to fruition now anyway. So you were quoted in that media release from the Ontario government in support of the treatment hubs. Why are they going to work, and why don't do you believe consumption sites had any benefit?
So this is a big subject. I think we could talk about this for an hour. So my belief is that the only way to treat the mental health crisis and disease that's out there, the only way to treat the addictions disease that's out there is through treatment. It's through rehabilitation. It's through counseling. It's through referrals to supports, to transitional housing, eventually permanent housing, to be able to eventually get employment counseling and back into the workplace where able, right? And so I use this analogy of what I think's happened over the past decade. If you can imagine being on Dunlop Street in Barrie, and let's imagine that there's 4 or 5 doors in a row that you could go through to get, what I'll call the open door policy to get help. And each one is a social service. But when you go through that door, we don't actually have the building or infrastructure in the background to provide the treatment, to provide the counseling, to be able to help those individuals reclaim their lives. What's happening is it's a facade, and the infrastructure just isn't there. So when I look at what the provincial government's announced in terms of this hub model, focusing on rehabilitation, on counseling, on treatment, on finding a new path forward, I think they are exactly correct on what is needed. In fact, I've lobbied for this. You know that I've lobbied for this. I've talked about it now for, I don't know, when was the original request for the consumption site, 2017 or 18 or something like that? And I was the only one who was standing up and saying, this isn't the right way to do this.
Well, you did that when you were in the House of Commons too,
and I did it in the House of Commons. And we can pull that video and we can play it today. The reality is we've taken 7 or 8 years where we haven't had the rehabilitative services in place. We have organizations that have tried, like God knows CMHA and all of these organizations have tried their best. I don't think it's a critique of them. I think there's just been a lack of intent and a lack of funding and a lack of focus on providing rehabilitative services instead of providing more front doors. We don't need more front doors. We don't need more organizations that are, able to invite people in, because once they're invited in, there was nothing in the background to refer to. We didn't have enough funding for detox. We know that, right? There's a moment in time and an opportunity for these people to be able to go, okay, I'm lucid. I'm able to make this decision. I want to go now. And then detox couldn't take them for a few days. And what happens in those few days is incredibly harmful.
And there are wait lists already. And the frustrating point, I think I heard from some people, not so much at the municipal level, because there's only so much you can do without support from the upper side, federal and provincial. At the end of the day, it's about saving lives, and everybody wants to do that. How to get there? The feds under right now Justin Trudeau have been very focused on safe consumption. We know what happened in BC; it's not working. The province is about saving lives too. Their focus is on treatment. It's frustrating. It can't come together. That's what why can't the sides just come together and work together instead of this back and forth?
Well, to be fair, the provincial government did invest in.
They have invested.
Sites,
they've got their own ministry
right?
now for addictions,
but they did invest in injection sites as well. So it's not fair to say that the federal government was injection sites and the provincial government was, against injection sites and just doing, rehab and what they've announced last week. That's actually not accurate. Well, what happened was they were both saying yes to injection sites, not in Barrie, but they were both saying yes to injection sites. I think that the provincial government's come to the conclusion before the federal government that the investment needs to take place in rehabilitative services. And when you look at Portugal, I remember when we first started down this road 7 or 8 years ago, everyone said, Portugal. They have essentially legalized illicit drugs, and that's the path forward. That's actually not what they did. What Portugal did was they said, if you are caught with, a substance that's heroin, let's just use that as an example, you would be taken to a group, an addictions counselor, a mental health supporter, and somebody from the judiciary. And they would say, Alex, why are you down this road? And, you'd say, okay, I've been down this road because. And they would say, okay, let's make sure this never happens again. And if you need help and support, here's the help and support. But if you got picked up again, right, you'd be given a choice. And the choice is you go get help in rehabilitative services, or you go do some time. Your choice. Right? We don't have that system in Canada. I'm not even sure it's constitutional to have that system in Canada. But the reality is that the places that have been effective, right? And there's data coming out this morning from Alberta saying that their decline in opioid-related deaths is faster than BC's. It's always related to rehabilitation, and it's always related to long-term thinking and treatment. And that's what I want to see here in the city of Barrie. The province has announced this fund. I want a rehabilitative center here. I want a place that is able to be accessed when people want and need it. The detox is available and accessed when people need it.
And that's critical that you mentioned that when people need it, as opposed to, there's going to be wait lists for certain things, and then we have relapses too. So this is huge.
It is huge, and it's actually a lot of money. When you think about $320 million being invested into this across the province, into 19 sites, 10 of those sites are going to be used, brought online sooner than the other 9. And I believe Barrie's positioned very well to be able to access one of these sites. And I think it's going to be a great support for our social services on the ground to be able to refer to.
When people, comments on social media, I'm so glad I got out of Barrie, or Barrie's this, it's gone. It's not like it used to be 30 years ago. Well, no city is like it was 30 years ago. You talk with your colleagues and get out and go to other cities and see. Barrie's no different than Guelph or Sault Ste. Marie or North Bay, maybe population-wise, but any size municipality.
Every city is struggling right now with homelessness. Every city is struggling right now with addictions. Every city is struggling right now with mental health. And there's a whole lot of reasons why, right? This didn't happen overnight. This is actually probably 20 years. You could actually go back 30 years to the closure of hospitals that would support individuals who had extreme mental health issues. But I think when we look forward, there's a few things that need to happen. Number one, we need those rehabilitative pieces in place. Number two, municipalities need to be able to have safe parks and safe places. And right now, the courts have tied the hands of municipal governments, ensuring that we can't actually remove these encampments. And it's a very, very, very big problem that needs the support of all of the mayors to come together with the social service organizations, and also needs to have the provincial governments. This isn't even just an Ontario issue. It's not even just a Canadian issue. It's a North American issue. We need all the provincial governments to come together, and we need the federal government at the table, because the reality is, if there's going to be eventually a challenge to the current what I'll refer to as court-instructed legislation, they're actually writing policy instead of interpreting it, if you ask me at this point. It's going to require some sort of use of the notwithstanding clause, or it's going to require new provincial and federal legislation to deal with it. So, there's some big things that are being grappled, and they're not municipal issues, but they become municipal issues because there hasn't been that provincial and federal movement.
And that's our program for this week. Thanks to Ian and Will for their input, to Matt Ladder for his technical expertise, and to you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to What Barrie's Talking About, rate it, review it. You can also keep up with What Barrie's Talking About on X at Barrie360, on our website, Barrie360.com, and there's our daily Kickstart podcast available from any streaming service and on our website. I'm Dan Blakely. Hope you'll join us again next week.